April 12th for both blocks on demand argumentative. Passage 1 from Into the Beautiful North by Louise Alberta Urey. Now, Lee is a young woman in a small village in Mexico. In this excerpt, she reflects on her close friend Vampy, a nickname given because of her quote-quote goth appearance, and her own father, from whom she has not heard in many months. Paragraph 1. Night. Mommy was asleep. Nayeli could hear her soft, whistling snores coming from her room. Poor Vampy. Nayeli thought she was an orphan. Her parents had died in one of those events Nayeli thought of as somehow especially Mexican. They had gone south instead of north, seeking work in Jalisco. Their bus driver had fallen asleep, and the bus had plunged off a cliff, killing all the passengers. The driver had survived. Vampy's grandmother had raised her. No mother or father in Tres Camarones would have allowed her to get away with her goth outfits, but a tired grandmother could not hope to contain her. Nayeli wandered through her mother's small house in the dark. The sideboard that held her father's picture was always lit, with a few votive candles standing on saucers. Doña Maria's small altar to Don Pepe. Nayeli used the hem of her blouse to dust the standing picture frame. Her father looked so handsome in his police uniform, erect and grim. He believed no real man ever smiled in photographs, especially not in uniform. After all, aside from the mayor, Don Pepe was the sole representative of the revolutionary government of the Republic. A man's man, but also a leader among men. He used to take her down to the Balarete River to shoot his .38. She smiled. He'd set up soda bottles and she'd shoot 6 rounds at a time and miss the bottles with every shot. He never said he wished he'd had a son, though she could tell he thought it often. He'd parked his police car beside the soccer field, and when she scored a goal, he'd set off the siren, sorely frightening the mothers in the stands. But he could not make enough money to take care of them. He earned the equivalent of $20 American a week, and he had to buy his own pistol and bullets. On the day he left, there was wailing and breast beating. He had Nayeli for a moment. She could smell his aftershave and his shaving cream and his deodorant and his breath mints, and the bus, the empty street. She shook her head. Don Pepe had been philosophical. He'd always offered her nuggets of wisdom that he would have given his son if he only had been so blessed. And the short girl he called La Chalapara was a good kid and had listened intently to his insights. So when he told Nayeli, "The more I learn, the less I know," she pondered it. He was a big reader, and he informed her once that all the water that ever existed remained in its original form. "You drink the same water that Jesus Christ washed his feet in," Don Pepe lectured. "Cleopatra once took a bath in your ice cube." His favorite saying, because it was concise, was, "Everything passes." He had written his gnomic prophecy on his postcard from Kankakee, Illinois, with its luridly colored picture of a mentally ill wild turkey in cornfield. "Me dear Chapara, things go well here. Good boys at work. I will send funds soon. I have much luck, but everything passes. Your father Pepe." Don Pepe was a Mexican man, a fatalist. He meant to impart much more than comfort. He meant that all good things would also end. All joy would crumble, and death would visit each and every one of them. He meant that regimes and ancient orders and cultures would also collapse. The world as we know it would become a new world overnight. Passage 2 from Emma by Jane Austen. Paragraph 1. Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little distress to vex her. She was the youngest of the 2 daughters of a most affectionate, indulgent father, and had, in consequence of her sister's marriage, been mistress of his house from a very early period. Her mother had died too long ago for her to have more than an indistinct remembrance of her caress, and her place had been supplied by an excellent woman as governess, who had fallen little short of a mother in affection. 16 years had Miss Taylor been in Mr. Woodhouse's family, less as a governess than a friend, very fond of both daughters, but particularly of Emma. Between them it was more the intimacy of sisters. Even before Miss Taylor had ceased to hold the nominal office of governess, the mildness of her temper had hardly allowed her to impose any restraint, and the shadow of authority being now long passed away, they had been living together as friend and family, very mutually attached, and Emma doing just what she liked, highly esteeming Miss Taylor's judgment, but directed chiefly by her own. The real evils, indeed, of Emma's situation were the power of having rather too much her own way, and a disposition to think a little too well of herself. These were the disadvantages which threatened alloy to her many enjoyments. The danger, however, was at present so unperceived that they did not by any means rank as misfortunes with her. Sorrow came, a gentle sorrow, but not all in the shape of any disagreeable consciousness. Miss Taylor married. It was Miss Taylor's loss which first brought grief. It was on the wedding day of this beloved friend that Emma first sat in mournful thought of any continuance. The wedding over and the bride people gone, her father and herself were left to dine together, with no prospect of a third to cheer a long evening. Her father composed himself to sleep after dinner as usual, and she had then only to sit and think of what she had lost. The event had every promise of happiness for her friend. Mr. Weston was a man of unexceptionable character, easy fortune, suitable age, and pleasant manners, and there was some satisfaction in considering with what self-denying, generous friendship she had always wished, and promoted the match. But it was a black morning's work for her. The want of Miss Taylor would be felt every hour of every day. She recalled her past kindness, the affection of 16 years, how she had taught and how she had played with her from 5 years old, how she had devoted all her powers to attach and amuse her in health, and how nursed her through the various illnesses of childhood. A large debt of gratitude was owing her. But the last 7 years, the equal footing and perfect unreserve which had soon followed Isabella's marriage, on their being left to each other, was yet a dearer, tenderer recollection. She had been a friend and a companion such as few possessed, intelligent, well-informed, useful, gentle, knowing all the ways of the family, interested in all its concerns, and peculiarly interested in herself. In every pleasure, every scheme of hers, one to whom she could speak every thought as it arose, and who had such an affection for her she could never find fault. How was she to bear the change? It was true that her friend was going only half a mile from them, but Emma was aware that great must be the difference between a Mrs. Weston only half a mile from them and a Miss Taylor in the house. And with all her advantages, natural and domestic, she was now in great danger of suffering from intellectual solitude. She dearly loved her father, but he was no companion for her. He could not meet her in conversation, rational or playful. The evil of the actual disparity in their ages, and Mr. Woodhouse had not married early, was much increased by his constitution and habits, for having been a valetudinarian all his life. Without activity of mind or body, he was much older man in ways than in years. And though everywhere beloved for his friendliness of his heart and his amiable temper, his talents could not have recommended him at any time. Footnotes: 1. Nominal, in name only. 2. Esteeming, regarding highly. 3. Alloy, dilute, reduce the purity of. 4. Isabella, Emma's older sister. 5. Valetudinarian, someone overly anxious about his or her health. Question 1. Which theme is common to both passages? A. When a loved one leaves home, a person left behind can feel great sorrow. B. Children who are allowed to have their own way face the consequences later. C. Parents should not try to become close friends with their children. D. Accepting all things as inevitable causes a person to have a pessimistic outlook. 2. Naili and Emma both describe memories of their missing loved ones. Select one idea from passage 1 and one from passage 2 that best describe the effect those memories have on the two young women. A. Naili feels comforted when she remembers going shooting with her father. B. Naili feels ashamed when remembering her father because she was not born a boy. C. Naili feels worried when she remembers her father's nuggets of wisdom. D. Emma feels grateful when she remembers Miss Taylor for their 16 years together. E. Emma feels a deepening grief when she remembers Miss Taylor. F. Emma feels so angry that she lashes out when she remembers Miss Taylor. 3. Part A. Select the sentence that summarizes a theme shared by both passages. A. Fathers and daughters share their own unique relationships. B. A father's status in society benefits his daughter. C. Fond memories of one father should be treasured. D. A father's sacrifice for his daughter is the ultimate expression of love. 4. Part B. Select the one statement about each passage that best supports the correct answer to Part A. A. Naili's father frightens the mothers at her soccer games. B. Naili's father writes her a postcard saying that his good luck is fleeting. C. Naili's father leaves home so he can earn enough money to take care of his family. D. Emma's situation allows her to run her father's household even though she is young. E. When Emma is depressed on the wedding day of her dear friend, Emma's father goes to bed after dinner as usual. F. When Emma's mother dies, her father does not remarry, instead hiring a governess. Essay prompt. You have just read 2 fiction excerpts with similar themes. Write a multi-paragraph essay in which you analyze how each author conveys a similar theme. Be sure to include evidence from both passages.